So here we are back again talking about Stephen King movies. Now in the previous video, I talked about how I purchased I guess it was like a set of Stephen King movies through iTunes for $20 for 8 movies, which was kind of like no brainer. 2 of them I had already seen, and then I reviewed 3 of them that I hadn't seen on the previous video. So if you want to watch that, that's up there somewhere. But yeah, now we're going to talk about the remaining 3 on the list. The first movie on the list was Pet Sematary. And look, I got to say, I was actually impressed with the quality of this digital copy. It was in 4K Dolby Vision, but it had no surround sound at all, which was kind of strange. But yeah, it looked amazing, but it's very 80s. The way that it looks, the way that it's filmed, the way that it's edited, the music choices, the hairstyles. I mean, everything is very 80s. So if you don't know anything about Pet Sematary, it's basically about a family that moves to this main town, kind of out in the country, kind of. And yeah, there's a really busy road right in front of their house and across from their neighbor, who is played by Fred Gwynn. And yeah, Fred Gwynn shows them that there's an old pet cemetery in the, kind of off in this path behind their house, and that's where a lot of people that lived in this neighborhood, dogs and cats, would get run over by these trucks going down this road, so they would bury them in this cemetery. But there's some other things going on, some supernatural stuff going on, with an area sort of behind the pet cemetery, and crazy things happen. Now, if you've seen the movie, you know that there's a very pivotal scene that takes place with a truck. You know what I'm talking about. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. All I'm going to say is that scene was edited very strangely. Like, it was sort of like I could feel the horror happening, the feeling that you're supposed to have. But then it got really strange, and then it cuts immediately to another scene. It's a funeral, and I'm sorry, it made me laugh. I seriously, because it was so jarring. It was like, I don't know, it felt very strange to me, and I'm sorry, it made me laugh. It's really weird to hear, because there are special features along this one. It's the only one that I've watched so far that has special features. It was weird to hear them talk about it like it's, how special this movie is and how it's stood the test of time and all that. And I'm like, really? I mean, I guess if you'd seen the movie when it came out in 1989, maybe, but I'm sitting here watching it now and going, this is like a TV movie. I don't know. I guess it just doesn't work in today's audience, kind of. The acting is not great. There are choices made with a person that's going through something. I'm just going to say that. There are people that go through things, and they have shock on their faces, and it's comical. It doesn't seem very believable. But I will say that I think his name is Miko Hughes, who played the little kid, the little boy. He was kind of great, in the parts that he had to do things. I mean, he's like 2.5, I think. It was kind of impressive, actually. And I can see why, for a while there, he was in Kindergarten Cop, and he was in some other movies as a child, obviously. But it was kind of impressive. And then Fred Gwynn, who, most people know as Herman Munster, right? He was fantastic in the movie. He really was. I believed his character, and he brought a gravitas that I really appreciated. And here's a fun fact for you. When Fred Gwynn was filming Pet Sematary, he was 61 years old. You know who else is 61 years old? Tom Cruise. Strange, right? But yeah, overall, it's the direction, it's the editing. It just feels very by the numbers. You can tell that the director is sort of a new director to movies, because it's just very, okay, this person says this line and the camera stands there and watches them say that line. There's not a whole lot of dynamic movement in this movie, and it's unfortunately it shows, and it kind of makes it feel nah. Now the next movie on the list, much better as far as the way that it's filmed, the way that, I mean, everything across the board was I'm just better, and it was made in 1983 called Cujo, and Cujo is, you know, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you would hear Cujo referenced many times. I mean, it was a thing, you know? Oh, there's a dog that's kind of angry. That's Cujo, right? I mean, that's the way it is. This movie goes in places that I just didn't really think that the movie was going to go in. It really takes place outside of a home for the most part, you know? And the way that things play out was really kind of interesting. And like kind of like, wow, I didn't know that this was what this was going to be. It's like Stephen King said, hey, if this thing happened, let's just see this play out and try to figure out what would happen. And I like that about Stephen King, is that he'll come up with an idea, this spark of an idea, and he'll just see it through to the end. And sometimes the ending is great. And sometimes it's like this. Daniel Hugh Kelly, who plays Vic, the husband, all I could see was he reminded me of a young Bobby Flay. I know that's all I saw, but he was actually pretty good in it. Dee Wallace, really good in it. Danny Pintaro, who he was in Who's the Boss. But anyway, they were really good, except when they're screaming. Oh my God. I wanted them to stop screaming. It was, wow. I actually think Dee Wallace was the star, right? She really put in a really good performance, I thought. I mean, there's a lot going on with her as a character, because really the first half of the movie is kind of telling this story that I'm not going to say it doesn't have anything to do with what the movie's actually about, but it is interesting because it's a lot of character drama. And I thought she did really, really well in the movie. I was actually very impressed. But when the movie starts happening, right, the reason we're all here, Cujo, a crazy dog, right? Some of the action actually made me laugh. And I know that that's not the reaction you're supposed to have in a horror film, right? But it was actually making me laugh. And then I started to think, but how else would you shoot some of this stuff? I mean, in 1983, there was no CG, right? You had to work around what you had. And I got to say, the dog was actually very impressive. The acting of the dog was very, very impressive. But then there's these POV shots from the dog's point of view. And I don't know, it just, like I said, it kind of made me laugh. But again, you know, 1983. With 1983 technology, that's the way you would have done that. But as I said before, the movie just ends. And it was like, oh, it's over. The credits are rolling. Okay. All right. I mean, I guess that's Cujo. And finally, we have The Dead Zone. 1983, again, was kind of interesting. Because I didn't realize that David Cronenberg directed this. So I was kind of expecting, okay, this one's going to get really weird. And I actually thought it was kind of funny right at the beginning. Christopher Walken, right? He's a teacher, and he's telling people to read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And it's about a teacher who's chased by a headless demon. And he kind of laughs about it. And I'm like, you played a headless demon in Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp, Tim Burton movie. I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of fun. I have to say though, the movie is really well done. I mean, each movie that I watched this time got progressively better. You know, Cujo, it had movement, it had style. The Dead Zone is dripping in style. David Cronenberg, he really does well with this movie. There's a scene at the beginning where it's the first premonition that Christopher Walken has, because that's the whole deal, right? He has an accident, he goes into a coma, and when he comes back, he's got these powers. Pretty good setup. But holy crap, the first premonition was awesome. The way that they show that he's in the premonition, but then he's not, and he's trying to explain what he's seeing, and then it goes back and he's in it again. Dude, it's really, really well done. I was very impressed with the look of this film. Seriously, I'm sitting there and I'm going, this movie is great. And then Tom Skerritt shows up. He's one of those guys, he's a character actor that I've always liked to see. And he brings, talk about gravitas, right? He just brings that with every role he does. And he plays, this detective or this sheriff called Bannerman. Interesting note, Bannerman is the same sheriff in Cujo. So you kind of see the same character in the same universe in the same year, two different actors playing that character. Kind of interesting stuff. When it really comes down to it, though, this movie is nothing without Christopher Walken. His performance is so great that it's made me go, I need to watch all of Christopher Walken's movies because this guy is really good. After seeing At Close Range, which I think you can see up there, after seeing that and then this, I'm like, okay, I thought Christopher Walken was one thing, but man, this guy's a good actor, and I want to see more from him. It was amazing. I will say the movie ends in a very, I guess, especially if you're sensitive to the times, and I'll just say gun control. It's kind of an uncomfortable little ending, right? But it's still really well done. I hadn't read any of these stories, so I didn't know what was going to happen. But fortunately, I didn't because I really enjoyed watching these movies play out, especially this one. Something else interesting that I've noticed while watching these movies, the cast, they just look like normal people. They don't look like movie stars. They look like normal, regular people. And I think that really helps sell the story that they're telling. It's something that I feel like we've gotten away from. I don't know. I just feel like it's cool to see people just like regular people. Cool stuff. So there you go. 3 more Stephen King movies. I don't know if you noticed, but they've gotten progressively better. That's because I watched them in sort of the order of the Rotten Tomatoes score, the Metacritic score. You know what I mean? I'm watching the best ones last. You know what I mean? So it got better and better as time went on. But I will say I do have a few more that I want to watch. And Halloween is next Tuesday, right? So yeah, we might have 3 more to watch, but I'm curious if you've seen any of these movies, what you think of them. If there's any other movies that you think I should watch from Christopher Walken, I mean, I'm all ears. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. So I'm happy that people seem to be enjoying it. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.